We can move on to the next presenter, which I believe Xavier is going to deliver us a video from Dr. Popi Karaolia from the NIRAS, from the International Water Research Center of Cyprus. The island of Cyprus has been many times cited during this morning, during this session, and she will give us a video presentation which is titled From Waste to Resilience, Wastewater as Public Health and Water Security Infrastructure in Cyprus. So if you can please from the...
Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here with you today, even online, to discuss how urban wastewater can serve not only as a waste stream to be treated, but also as a sentinel of public health and as part of Cyprus's water security infrastructure. So the main message I'm trying to pass through this presentation is that wastewater treatment plants can become strategic information points, both for health protection as well as water resilience. Cyprus offers a useful example because it combines severe water scarcity, extensive reclaimed water use, and recent experience with wastewater surveillance. To understand the value of wastewater, first we need to start with the wider water context. So globally, we're moving beyond water stress towards what has been described recently as water bankruptcy. We have continuous over-abstraction, pollution, ecosystem degradation, and increasing climate instability. So in this context, water must be treated both as a constraint and as an opportunity. Wastewater is central to this shift because it can reduce pressure on freshwater resources, to provide useful information, and to support more resilient water management. So this is especially relevant for Mediterranean countries where climate pressure, agriculture, tourism, and urban growth all compete for the limited water resources. Therefore, wastewater should no longer be only seen as an end-of-pipe issue, but as a part of a water balance sheet. So urban wastewater treatment plants sit at a critical interface. Influent wastewater reflects the population and activities connected to the sewer network, while treated effluents reflect the performance of treatment and the quality of water returning to the environment or being reused. This means that wastewater treatment plants can act as public health sentinels, environmental monitoring points, and water security infrastructure all at the same time. Importantly, risk is reshaped during wastewater treatment. We have pathogens, chemicals, antimicrobial resistance indicators, and other contaminants which may be reduced, transformed, or in some cases persist. And this makes the treatment plant a key point for both surveillance as well as intervention. So the next step is to transform wastewater treatment plants into information and early warning platforms. Untreated wastewater can provide signals on pathogens, antimicrobial resistance, pharmaceuticals, and community-level behaviors, while treated wastewater can provide information on treatment performance, reuse safety, and environmental risks. So to make this useful for decision-making, we need a common language. We need to have common and joint indicators, limits, protocols, quality assurance, and databases, all for the relevant stakeholders that translate science into specific action. And this is where the public health and water management agendas come together. Wastewater data should not remain only in laboratories, but they need to be converted into useful and usable information for utilities, health authorities, environmental regulators, and policy makers. Wastewater surveillance of untreated effluents provides population-level public health information because it can detect trends in infections even when clinical testing is limited, and it captures signals from both symptomatic and asymptomatic individuals. And one sample can represent thousands of people, making it a very cost-efficient tool for early warning, trend monitoring, and targeted public health actions. It can also provide information on imported infections, emerging pathogens, and community behaviors. So its value is not to replace clinical surveillance, but to complement it. And when combined with epidemiological and clinical data, wastewater can help authorities understand where and when public health risks are increasing. In Cyprus, wastewater surveillance was applied during the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic through the PULSE program. And between October 2021 and September 2022, 7 large wastewater treatment plants were monitored twice per week for 12 months. The wastewater signal was compared with clinical data, demonstrating that wastewater could reflect community infection trends and support early warning capacity at a national scale. And this was an important proof of concept for Cyprus because it showed that wastewater surveillance can be implemented in a coordinated way across the country and can generate data that are directly relevant for public health interpretation and specific actions. So following the SARS-CoV-2 proof of concept, wastewater surveillance in Cyprus expanded to more targeted and strategic sites. Specifically in Larnaca, surveillance included pumping stations, the hospital, which is the general hospital that serves all the city. We have the International Airport of Cyprus, influent and effluent wastewater. And in Nicosia, surveillance included key urban and institutional sites, which also included the General Hospital of Nicosia, which is the largest one on the island, as well as a first reception center, which hosts people coming into Cyprus and are waiting for their papers to be recorded and processed before they move on to their final destinations. Cyprus also piloted aircraft and airport wastewater surveillance at both Larnaca and the Paphos airports, showing how transport hubs can be used to monitor imported or emerging public health threats. So this evolution of the wastewater surveillance system is important because it moves wastewater surveillance from a single national signal to a more spatially resolved system, and by sampling specific sites, we can better understand where signals originate and how different urban factions contribute to public health information, for example, hospitals, etc. So wastewater surveillance can also support antimicrobial resistance monitoring. In Larnaca, for example, results from airports, hospitals, pumping stations, and the wastewater treatment plant showed that different resistance genes and indicators have been associated with different urban sectors. This is a very important piece of information for us because it shows that sampling design matters. Targeted sampling can help identify where specific antimicrobial resistance pressures are emerging and where specific public health interventions may be most useful. For example, hospital wastewater may reflect healthcare-related antimicrobial resistance pressures, while airport wastewater may provide information on international mobility. This makes wastewater a very useful tool for understanding antimicrobial resistance, not only as a clinical issue, but also as an environmental and urban system issue. So wastewater surveillance did not begin with COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2. In Cyprus, our laboratory has been involved in wastewater-based monitoring of illicit drugs since 2011 through European and international networks such as the SCORE network. And today, wastewater is used to monitor several illicit substances, some of them that you can see here, as well as alcohol and tobacco biomarkers. And these data are being used already to support public health authorities in understanding community-level behaviors and trends in order to design targeted prevention actions. And this example shows the broader value of wastewater-based epidemiology or wastewater surveillance. The same infrastructure and scientific principles can support different public health questions, ranging from infectious diseases to substance use and behavioral indicators. So treated wastewater is also a part of Cyprus's water security infrastructure. Cyprus is facing severe water scarcity with a very high water exploitation index, strong reliance on desalination, and significant network losses. Reclaimed water already supports agriculture significantly, green spaces, and pressure reduction on dams and aquifers. However, expanding reuse requires trust. That trust depends on transparent monitoring, risk management, and clear communication of safety, as we have learned in our island. And this is why reuse cannot be treated only as a technical solution, but it is also a governance and communication challenge, because users and the public need confidence that reclaimed water is safe and properly managed before they can actually trust it to be used. So safe reuse requires continuous documentation and reassessment to make sure that we are using high quality reclaimed water. In Larnaca, wastewater treatment achieved high removal of several antimicrobial resistance indicators when measured in absolute abundances. However, it was interesting to notice that when the results were normalized to the microbial community, not in general to absolute abundances, part of the resistance microbiome appeared to be persistent. And this showed why both absolute and relative indicators are important when interpreting and translating data, and why reuse safety should be assessed through multiple lines of evidence. So in practice, this means that a treatment plan may perform very well, but still require continuous verification depending on the final use of the reclaimed water. For risk management purposes, the question is not only whether contaminants are reduced, but whether the remaining signal is relevant for human or environmental exposures and risks. So metagenomic risk assessment also helped move from measurements to interpretation. In the Larnaca study that we conducted, human health and ecological resistance risk indicators showed higher relative risks in solid fractions of wastewater and a clear gradient across different sites, with hospital wastewater showing the highest signals. This supports the need for targeted monitoring of high-risk resources, such as hospital wastewater, because understanding of solid associated risks and careful assessment at the point of reuse is very important. So the point of reuse is particularly critical in the evaluation of risks because it represents the actual interface with people, with crops, with soils and ecosystems. So surveillance of reclaimed water should not stop at the treatment plant outlet, but should be connected to the exposure pathways and different reuse practices identified. So to fully understand reclaimed water, we also need to consider micropollutants and contaminants of emerging concern, of course, including pharmaceuticals, microplastics, antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Some compounds may be taken up by irrigated crops, which is particularly relevant when reclaimed water is used in agriculture. This does not mean reuse should stop. It means that reuse should be supported by better evidence, risk assessment, and fit-for-purpose treatments. So the key point here is that reclaimed water is valuable, but it is also complex. To use it safely and confidently, we need to understand not only conventional quality parameters, but also emerging chemical and microbiological risks. So in response to the EU minimum requirements for water reuse, our team has prepared the risk management plans for the use of reclaimed water in all the cities of Cyprus. Because fully quantitative data were not always available, the approach used a semi-quantitative risk assessment, and the plans considered risks to human health and potential environmental impacts, helping to move reclaimed water reuse from compliance alone towards a more systematic risk management approach. So our work showed the importance of the local context. Each reuse system had a different treatment process, different users, different crops, different exposure routes, and different environmental receptors. So risk management needs to be site-specific rather than generic. So based on the Cyprus experience, urban wastewater should be recognized as a critical knowledge infrastructure. In conclusion, for public health, it can support early detection, trend monitoring and targeted action when linked with clinical data. And for water security, it shows that resilience is not only about producing more water, but also about better management, better transparency, and trust in reuse. So the next step is a national framework that connects wastewater treatment plants into a network for public health protection, water security, and early warning. Of course, this requires standardized methods, quality control, clear indicators, and decision-ready outputs, such as briefs, risk maps, and triggers for action. In other words, the goal is not only to produce measurements, but to create an operational system that supports timely and evidence-based decisions. So finally, I hope that this presentation has shown that wastewater can be a practical bridge between public health, environmental protection, and water security, particularly in water-scarce Mediterranean settings. I would like to thank you very much for your attention and the opportunity to present this work here by the organizers. I really appreciate it, and I would be happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.